all have guilty pleasures, movies we watch every single year that we know aren't great, they might even be awful, but they fill us with joy or even nostalgia. We know they're bad, but we can't quite look away. So today on Top 5 Scary Videos, I'm going to be counting down our list of the top 5 horror movies we love to hate. Before we begin though, be sure to stick around until the end of the video where I'll be responding to some of your comments. And with that, let's jump in. In at number 5 we have Tusk. I love Tusk and I don't care who knows it. I know it's not the best movie, but it also doesn't take itself seriously. That's the whole point. However, there are people out there that hate it with a burning passion. I personally know it's not great and I have learned to love all of its faults. It's a real guilty pleasure, that's for sure. Released in 2014 and directed by Kevin Smith, Tusk stars the likes of Michael Parks, Justin Long, Haley Joel Osment, and Genesis Rodriguez. Now, the movie itself follows a US podcaster, Justin Long, who ventures into the Canadian wilderness to interview an old man, Michael Parks, a man with quite the extraordinary past. However, Justin Long quickly learns of his dark past, which involves a walrus. Justin Long soon has his life turned upside down when he awakes to discover he's strapped in a chair and that he himself is going to be turned into a walrus. What a shock that would be. He is soon conditioned to think and act as a walrus, with him taking down his creator, yet he is now forever trapped in his new walrus life. So sad. Now yes, this movie is as ridiculous as it sounds. At times it's awful, but I can't help but enjoy it. There are truly some genuine moments of horror, with Justin Long and Michael Parks giving great performances, with the climax being just as ridiculously entertaining. However, not everyone agreed, with critics giving it a 45% approval rating, stating, I quote, "Tusk is pleasantly ridiculous and charmingly self-deprecating, but that isn't enough to compensate for its thin, overstretched story." Coming in at number 4 we have Anaconda. I often forget this movie even exists. I mean, I know why, because it's trash, the dirtiest of trash, but I do love to on it. It should also be watched at least once every 5 years, it's a rule. Released in 1997 and directed by Louis Lalosa, the movie stars the likes of Ice Cube, J-Lo, Jon Voight, Eric Stoltz, and Owen Wilson. It honestly seems like random names were pulled out of a hat. It's such an odd mishmash of people. I still don't quite understand it. The film itself follows a film crew shooting a documentary in the Amazon rainforest. However, they are quickly captured by a snake hunter who is hunting down the legendary green anaconda. I absolutely hate snakes, so there is still a small part of me that is low-key terrified of this movie, but the special effects quickly remove that fear. Jon Voight is particularly terrible in this movie, with an accent that people still can't seem to pinpoint. J-Lo is actually pretty good in the film, but she definitely has better performances on her IMDb page, aka Hustlers. Anaconda has since developed quite the intense cult following, regardless of it being such an absurd and terrible movie, but it is so damn fun. You can't help but smile and laugh while watching, cheering on the snake in the process. The movie holds a 38% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, with the general consensus reading, Anaconda's pulpy pleasures are constricted by its own absurdity, but creature feature fans may enjoy its brazen silliness. And that they do, it's so much fun because of how silly it is, not to mention the laughable special effects. It's the best movie to watch if you're to enjoy a fun drinking game. Not that I endorse that. I can't endorse that, but I do love a drink. In at number 3 we have Freddy vs. Jason. I only just recently watched this movie and it's safe to say I was not disappointed. I actually got exactly what I was expecting. A terrible, trashy movie that I couldn't help but smile throughout. Released in 2003 and directed by Ronnie Yu, Freddy vs. Jason is a crossover between A Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, something I didn't realize I needed in my life until I watched it. In the movie, Freddy, who is losing power, resurrects Jason to torment the people of Springwood. However, when Jason begins intruding on Freddy's territory, the two monsters begin to battle each other. Legendary. The movie was of course terrible, but it was fun nonetheless, with horror movie fans returning to it each and every year, usually around Halloween time. Funnily enough, Freddy vs. Jason performed better than any of the Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street movies, with it grossing over $116 million worldwide, which is insane. But I guess that's a result of combining two of the most iconic horror villains in cinematic history. The movie itself performed relatively well in the eyes of critics, with it receiving an approval rating of 41%, with the general consensus reading, fans of the two horror franchises will enjoy this showdown, but for everyone else, it's the same old slice and dice. And honestly, I couldn't have put it better myself. This movie is not for your average cinema goer. It is specifically catered towards horror lovers, which is why we all love to hate it. In at number 2, Jaws the Revenge. I'm so excited to discuss this movie because it's so bad but so fun, but really so bad. It's an absolute train wreck and shouldn't even be allowed to be considered a part of the Jaws family, but it is and we have to accept it. Released in 1987 and directed by Joseph Sargent, Jaws the Revenge, or Jaws 4, stars the likes of Lorraine Gary, Lance Guest, and Michael Caine. Yep, a very random assortment of people. The movie itself follows the now widowed Ellen Brody, who believes that a great white shark is seeking revenge on her family, with it killing her son and following her to the Bahamas. Now the movie really destroys the entire Jaws franchise, with Martin Brody being killed off screen, making his wife the protagonist of this frankly boring film. To make things even more crazy, Ellen is afraid of sharks, so why she lives near a body of water is beyond me. Just move to a landlocked town and be done with it. To make matters worse, the shark is seeking out the Brody family, and worse still, the movie implies that Ellen may in fact be telepathically linked to the shark. It's a mess. The movie was utterly destroyed by critics, with it receiving 0% on Rotten Tomatoes, with the general consensus reading, illogical, tension-free, and filled with cut-rate special effects. Jaws 4 The Revenge is a story chapter in a once-proud franchise. Savage, but also true. As terrible as this movie is though, I do love to hate it. It's an absolute train wreck that I can't quite look away from. And finally, coming in at number 1, House of Wax. This movie is a true guilty pleasure for me, and I love how bad it is. I'm aware that it's terrible, but I love it for that. I actually was so obsessed with this film for a period of time, I wrote the entire screenplay out in a book, and then I learned all the dialogue. Why? I don't know. I had a weird obsession with House of Wax. Released in 2005 and directed by Jaume Collet Serra, the movie is all over the place, even its cast. Let's start with that first. This movie stars Alicia Cuthbert, Chad Michael Murray, Jared Padalecki, and Paris Hilton. That's right, Paris Hilton is in this train wreck and it's excellent. The movie itself follows a group of teenagers who are on a road trip to Louisiana for a football game. However, their trip is derailed when they stop in a desolate area to camp and encounter a terrifying stranger who one of the group pisses off. Then of course things descend into madness, their fan belt is destroyed, and they meet a stranger who takes them to the nearest town called Ambrose, a town which holds even more secrets. Brother and sister Wade and Carly discover pretty quickly that things aren't right in this town. It's seemingly empty and the people who are there don't seem very human. Then of course they come across the House of Wax, where everything is quite literally made out of wax, including the people inside of it. They soon discover that the entire town is wax, and under the wax was once people, living people. The movie does have some quality moments of horror, with Carly having her lips glued shut and even her finger cut off. And of course another character's Achilles being cut. It's brutal. However, the good moments don't last long, with unnecessary scenes being inserted that don't quite fit in, as well as another random storyline where Paris Hilton might be pregnant, and then added relationship drama to make things worse. It's gory and violent but utterly ridiculous, making some moments that had potential falling flat and falling hard. Not to mention the movie ends on a cliffhanger with a new villain being introduced, which sets up the potential for a House of Wax 2. But thankfully that never happened. The first was enough for all of us. It's so much fun but so bad. I love it. Well, there we have it. Do you guys agree with our list? With any horror movies that we missed? Leave us all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below, and perhaps we can do a part 2. Before I go though, I just want to respond to a few comments from one of our last videos. Top 5 horror movie villains we all root for. Alton Worcester said, every time I see Michael Myers, I cheer like I just saw my favorite wrestler win a world championship. I also love Michael Myers. He's one of my favorite horror movie villains. Freddy is just slightly above him. Someone literally asks me this on this. Oh no, they asked me on my Instagram story the other day. I said I would marry Michael because he's the silent type. I don't have to deal with this bull. I would Freddy, claws on, and then I'd kill Jason because, I mean, he died a child and he's never really fully developed. Jason doesn't do it for me. Freddy gets me going. Michael is for life. Kid Death said 30 Days of Night, all I'm gonna say about best vampire movie. Okay, 30 Days of Night is great, I agree. It's a very good movie that I watch almost every year, specifically for Melissa George, who I found to be incredibly hot in that movie. She's also a good actress, but very attractive. But I'd say Let the Right One In just beats it. Bloody Mary said, I adore Let the Right One In. Exactly. It's amazing. Everyone should watch it. If you haven't watched it, what are you doing with your life? Also read the book, although the book is very disturbing. Horseman for Death said Carrie and Ellie shouldn't be considered villains, more tragic anti-heroes. I guess you could call them that, but at the end, I guess when they're killing everyone, even innocents, it's kind of villainous. Jim Polite said, Lucy, have you seen the trailer for the remake of Witches? I know you said that's one of your best/worst remembered movies from childhood. I was excited to see the trailer for the new Witches, starring Anne Hathaway as the Grand High Witch, aka the Grand High Witch haunted me when I was a child, because hell, that movie is not a children's movie, and Angelica Houston's The Grand High Witch was traumatic. I still can't fully watch it with my eyes open. Anyway, they've remade it for those who don't know. Anne Hathaway is playing the Grand High Witch, and it looks like utter garbage. They've used special effects. She doesn't look horrific under her mask. She floats like the genie from Aladdin, and then they all look normal. What's the point? It looks shit. Why add special effects when you can do practical effects? So I won't be watching it. Sorry, Anne. George Navarro said, Queen Lucy, she's very scary. I'm rooting for you, Lucy. Thank you. I'm rooting for me too. And on that note, if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another scary vid. Until next time, see you later.